Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions. I'm Michelle Hawk, and I'm here with my shaman sister, Katherine Bird. Today, in episode 126, we are talking about exorcisms and extractions. Now, if you're not familiar already, I invite you to go back and circle back. We did a couple of episodes, I want to say like number 92 and 93, about why you don't have an entity and no one is attacking you, and what happens if you do have an entity and some psychic spiritual attack is happening. But today we're diving a little deeper and we're talking about the extractions specifically. Kat, how are you doing?
Amazing.
Awesome.
This is great. I'm so excited to be doing these episodes with you again because it's been so long. So
Woohoo.
yeah.
Absolutely. We're getting back in the groove. Awesome. And we wanted to do this topic. We've been, this is really how Kat and I decide to do all of the topics, is that we're having a conversation about like, oh, I came across this situation where blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, oh, we should definitely talk about that. Now, Kat, how many people, actually, that's not the right question. How often or you have people reach out to you asking about extractions or exorcisms, right? Like, this is
Yeah.
why we got into this conversation. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Because often
And
there's like a very frantic email with a lot of details
yep.
that comes in.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
from someone I've never heard from before, don't know them. And there's a lot of, it's sad because there's a lot of desperation oftentimes. There's a lot of confusion, often coinciding with a lot of significant health issues that are happening at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be if you're feeling that this is you, like if you're having this issue, it can be a very, very challenging in every area of your life experience.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I have a lot of compassion for people who are going through this and understanding. And so let's talk about some of the things that come up though when we look at this, because both Michelle and I do extractions and have done many over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but neither one of us are like the go-to. I'm not the extraction factory of like I'm trying to push a bunch of people through doing extractions every day.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some reasons why. So
Yeah,
we should talk about that a little bit.
absolutely. Yeah, it's,
But
I
where do
also,
we start? Where
where
should
do we
we
even start? Well, I mean, so I want to continue on the thread that you were talking about of what are these people presenting with when they contact us? Because I also get many such emails or contact forms or consultations where people are reaching out to me in a state of distress because they're having the experience of, spirits are spirits are attacking me, or I can't sleep and I have voices in my head. I even had someone reach out to me saying that the spirits who were attacking them burned down their house. And I've had, people saying, okay, these spiritual energies that are disguising themselves as light beings, and they lied to me that they were light beings, but they're actually, I found out that, there are these shadow beings. There's many, many things that people reach out to us with. And again, as Kat's saying, I have compassion for that. These people are reaching out usually because they're afraid. They don't know what to do. They've probably already tried something. Like, I don't know if I've ever actually been the first person that anyone reaches out to. I think people usually try other things first, and then they find me, or they find Kat, or they find our podcast episodes about entities and attachments and psychic attacks. And then they come contact us, and usually by that point there is there's a lot of fear and belief of, okay, am I crazy, am I making this up, or I'm not crazy, you have to believe me. And perhaps some fear of judgment because of the nature of this communication as well. And in some cases, people, sort of despairing about, okay, if I've been to see all these other practitioners and they weren't able to help me, am I stuck with this thing forever? In which case, I don't want to be on this planet anymore. I've had many people who contact me share some sentiment about something to that effect of, I don't want to live with that. Whether they're acknowledging, any suicidal ideation, etc. And so, this is a very serious thing when people are reaching out to us with this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I will say, I had a conversation where, and I'm trying, gosh, I said it so eloquently when I was talking with a consult not that long ago, where I said, I've had many people reach out to me who are going through this experience, and there are these things that universally every single person has in common. And right now I can only remember 2 out of the 3, but what I said at that time was, one is these people are going through or have recently gone through some big shakeup, life turmoil, whether it's really significant loss or big spiritual initiation, health crisis. Kat, as you mentioned, a lot of these people experiencing health issues simultaneously, or losing a relationship, some aspect of a big shakedown. The second one, I can't remember right now, but maybe I'll come up with later. And then the third one I said is that every single one of these people who has reached out to me about this has also been in some aspect of spiritual initiation and spiritual training. They opened up their channel because they wanted to be a light worker and develop their mediumship. And then some unwelcome beings came in. They pursued a path of sacred plant medicine practice that opened them up too far, and now they have demons or attachments. They enrolled in an unethical mystery school, and they opened themselves up to demonic or vampiric energy. So that was the third one that I've seen universally true in every person who has ever reached out to me about extractions or actually, no, that's not true. I did have one woman ask me to do an exorcism on her granddaughter, like her what's it called when they're like 12 years old, preteen granddaughter. And I said no for a variety of reasons, but that was the exception to that.
Well, I would say the other one is oftentimes it's arising out of a previous traumatic event, some sort of trauma that's occurred. And that can be something that happened to you when you even were a child, or some kind of physical trauma that happened being in the hospital for a long time, surgical trauma, these kinds of things, where you can sometimes pick those things up. I don't know if that's your third one or not.
It might have been. I think that was related to when I was talking about like people have been through a big shakedown, but I think I did also speak to people who have had or like the blueprint of trauma or loss or something, in like being the open door that these unwelcome spirits come through.
Or addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being an addiction for especially, I mean, for a long period of time, because these kinds of spirits really like that stuff.
Yeah. I don't remember. I'm just going to let it go and move on of what the third one was. But yeah,
this is good context for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can we talk a little bit about the challenges of this, of when we have these conversations with each other and we're like, what should I do with this person? What's the best course of action? And even in the conversations that we have with these people about the best course of action for them and what we see is a good course of action if you are going through this process.
Yeah. Let's talk about like, what the best course of action is, but I want to give people a little context as to why do entities and unwelcome spiritual attention show up in the first place. And again, we do have that other episode, I think it's number 93, about entities and attachments, so I won't go too much into that here. But I will say that unwelcome spirit attention, that's the umbrella term that I'm using for this, whether it's an entity, attachment, vampire, mocking spirit, hungry ghost, whatever it is, they don't come from nowhere. they can only come in if there is a door for them to come in. And that door, as Kat was giving a whole list of really great examples earlier about addiction or about trauma or whatever that is, or some aspect of our energy that allows these beings to come in. I am 0% saying that in a shamey, blamey way. Like that's, it is a thing that we live in the world and we don't know better until we know better. And there are many people in that circumstance who have had childhood developmental trauma, who have suffered, traumatic incidents or accidents, chronic illness, whatever it is. And so the door that these beings come into already exists within us. There's some aspect of our energy body, either if we don't have great boundaries, if we have leaky energy body, if we have some unconscious or subconscious agreements or soul contracts with destructive energies, if we're perpetuating an abusive relationship and saying subconsciously, okay, this is the treatment that I'm willing to receive. There are many, many reasons or doors that could be open for a spirit to come in.
And we can even call them in. We can ask for them to be there. And like you're saying, it can be very unconscious, but we can be calling them in for protection because we're in a dangerous situation and this is kind of who's showing up. Or we could be calling them in to for lots of actually for different reasons, because we're alone, because we're calling in something. But we also, there can be a part of us is calling in these experiences as a form of training, which is why I always say the demons are our greatest teachers, because oftentimes what I've seen is the people who've had really intense things like this have become very, very masterful. And they have become great practitioners because through this process, they've learned boundaries and they've learned to stop engaging in their addictions and their destructive behaviors and to take care of their physical body and to learn discernment and protection and radiance within themselves and to do their practices and to show up in a really different way. And they transcend the energies. And this can be called changing your karmic address. This being no longer has any resonance with you, so it doesn't affect you anymore.
Mm-hmm. Did you just make that term up right now? That's a great term, changing your karmic address.
No, I didn't actually.
That's awesome. It's great. I love it. And that's really powerful transmutation that happens there.
Yeah.
And we can get, and this is kind of a different conversation of, okay, well, what happens when we do an extraction? There's this aspect of sometimes with these demons as our greatest teachers, sometimes we are also able to be in service in a healthy way as charity work, to provide healing to the demons themselves so that they experience their own healing and catharsis as an offshoot of our process. But again, that I feel like it's kind of a different, let's do an episode about that some other time.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very complex
Right.
spiritual situations.
Right. That's more of a grad school conversation. So let's stick with this for now about extraction. So you were bringing up, Kat, well, what do we do with that? And usually, again, when we have people reach out to us, it's like, I need this fixed. I need an extraction yesterday. I need it now. And, I pause with that because I think, people, again, it's like these beings don't show up from nowhere. They don't just all of a sudden appear. It actually, for a big, potent energy, an entity to latch onto you and to really ingrain itself to the point where you're thinking, gosh, I really need an extraction, it usually takes time for that relationship to develop. That is a relationship that you're having with that unwelcome spirit attention. It doesn't just show up overnight. So I invite people to realize it's not going to be an overnight solution. It's not, I don't ever say to anybody, yeah, I'll do an extraction on you, one extraction and you'll be good. I
Yeah.
will never say that to anyone.
Yeah, I think that's the big piece. And that's where we run up against a lot of challenge in this. Because for the most part, people I want extraction. I want it now. I want it to look like this and feel like this and be like this. I mean, there
Mhm.
are situations where maybe you move into a place and you've got some things that are already there, and so you can kind of move away or deal with what's there, and it's a little bit more quick sometimes. But generally, when it is attached to you, it's
Mhm.
not. And I think that's the piece, is that even I've had conversations with people and said, well, the my minimum, because my minimum that I ever, most people I work with for 6 months, because I mostly work in mentorship at this point, but my minimum is 3 sessions that I will ever do with anyone, unless they're maybe in a program and they're getting an educational training. So my minimum is 3 sessions. And I've had people where I've said, okay, so this is the plan, and it's going to be these, we have to do these 3 sessions, and they have to occur within this period of time. And
Mhm.
I've had somebody go, okay, well, let me just come to 1 session and see what happens and feel it out. And it's like, well, no, because
Mhm.
it's putting all of this pressure on me as a practitioner to complete something in 1 session, when, like you said, it's systemic.
Yeah. It's putting pressure on you, and it's also, looking at, again, if these beings come in through a door that already exists within our systems and it takes time for them to get there, then looking at, okay, well, they're really deeply ingrained or latched onto something that is kind of fundamental about that person's current incarnation and way of being and lifestyle. So
Mhm.
even if you were to go in and do an extraction, if you didn't actually make any changes to the fundamental foundation of your energetic makeup or change your karmic address, that being could come back conceivably,
Or
or
something.
another being could come in. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, because it is on every level, so you want in the process of this extractive process. So you can, let's see how to explain this. When you're working in this way, so you're working, yes, spiritually, but a lot of this is energetically, because you're looking at the entire energy body, the energy field, and the internal energy. And so, whenever you're clearing something, releasing something, removing something, especially something that is as dense as something that's being extracted, which could be a being, but it also could be a coagulation and a stagnation of energy that is maybe being experienced as something that has almost a consciousness, because it's so compressed and held. So when you're going through that process and you're clearing and pulling this out, it's going through the entirety of the whole system, of the whole energy body, the energy field, and your system is reacting to it, and it is having an experience of it as it moves away from you, which takes a little bit of time. And there is energetic debris inside, like it is just the same as if you had been in like with a shotgun, right? Like there's debris that also needs to be cleared, that's that's in relationship to this whole experience. So there's energy that needs to be cleared that isn't just about this one thing. And
Mhm.
then in order to clear that energy, there has to be a certain robustness of self, which
Yeah.
means that you have to be drawing in and bringing in energy as well, and doing that in an intelligent way to support the system to have a robustness and a healing effect on the entirety of the body and the energy field. So those two things are happening in progressive levels. I could say it's hard to describe exactly what's going on, but it's, you're clearing, I call this the cleansing and the purification process, where you're getting rid of, you're
Mhm.
clearing, you're letting go, and you're bringing in, nurturing, re-enlivening, bringing life force and robustness into the system. And those two things are happening in succession and in congruence with each other, so that the system is capable of releasing and letting go of something, and robust enough to be able to integrate that healing process. Is
I
that,
would even
I
say,
don't know if that's helpful. Is that helpful?
Oh, no, it's extremely helpful. And you said that very well. I would even say for some people who are extremely depleted, doing some of that initial cultivation to create the
Mhm,
robustness in the system is going to be important as a precursor.
mhm,
Because if, and as we were mentioning earlier, a lot of these people who are coming to us have chronic health conditions, are experiencing insomnia, are experiencing fatigue, depression, whatever it is, and their life force is so depleted to begin with that I wouldn't feel good about actually doing an extraction on anybody until they had cultivated their life force enough to be able to go in and do some big work, because otherwise it can shock the system and it can throw them into even further dysregulation.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, and I don't hear people talking about that enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that in the medical qigong training that I did, that was a conversation that was had quite a bit as far as the when you're really dealing with deeply toxic energy in somebody and how
Mm-hmm.
much you have to replenish and replenish and replenish. And that's one of the issues with people who are like, well, can't I just come for one session and just like clean this shit out and get rid of it? But no, there isn't. You're very complex. This is a very complex system that we're working with. So, when you start taking things out, you have to be replenishing and bringing stuff in. And like you said, Michelle, when somebody's super, super depleted, they need a lot of replenishing energy brought into their system. And it might be that that first session that you have might be just about that. And I've had this experience where somebody has wanted this extraction, and I get into the first session, I'm like, well, the reality is this is where we need to go, which is like childhood stuff, and bringing the parts together a little bit more, finding some more wholeness and cohesion of self
Mm-hmm.
before we can get into this piece. And I've had somebody go, well, yeah, that's just not what I want. That's not what
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking to do that work. I'm doing that work somehow, or I've done that with my therapist. And it's like, okay, well, um, I don't know what to tell you. Then, because do no harm is where we're coming from. And so when we look at somebody, we need to, and I'm really, I'm going to point this right now towards my other practitioners who are out there who are doing extractions and are good at this work because you're naturally good at this work, or you've gotten trained in this, and you are, not wanting to push people into doing bigger packages with you, and you're not wanting to tell people how your work works or the process that they might need to go through in order to do this work with you, and you're trying to do things in the way that they want you to and people please. If that's you, I'm calling you out right this minute. So, because it can be a disservice because people will not get the integration work that they need out of this kind of experience.
That's really important. And I would add, the integration work, but also the preparation. So
Mm-hmm.
when I was going through a consultation cycle with somebody, I don't know, quite a while ago, where I was explaining to them, look, an extraction isn't just about going in to do the one session like we've been talking about. There's this whole series. And this particular person, I was advising them that we do the 6 months of work together, which is primarily how I support people one on one as well, for all of these reasons. And I gave them all of these reasons about the phases of an extraction, a healthy extraction actually working: preparation, to cultivate life force, to clean up energetic sludge, to address underlying beliefs and karmic blueprints, any other leaks of energy that might prevent an extraction from being effective. So all the preparation phase. the actual extraction work, which is you go in and you dig the stuff out and you do the clearing and you invoke the divine beings or whatever it is that that particular extraction is requiring. And then the integration of like becoming the version of yourself that is immune to those things, coming into the actualized embodied radiance of yourself that will no longer be plagued by unwelcome spirit attention, and then living that self in the world. So when you frame it that way, gosh, is 6 months really long enough? Like, yeah, is how long does it actually take to become a different person? Essentially,
Mhm.
that's what these people are asking for. Is I want to become a different person. I want to transform into the version of myself who is no longer plagued by unwelcome spirit attention, who is full of my own radiant aliveness, who has healthy boundaries and healthy energetic protection, and can confidently open my channel or do my spiritual work or work with divine beings without fear of being bothered, harassed, attacked, whatever it is, by unwelcome energies. That's what these people are asking.
Mm.
Do we think that's possible in one session? No. Is that or not likely? I'm not ever going to promise anybody that,
I mean,
but cultivating that over.
it's not that you can't have a huge experience and have something leave. That
Yeah.
can happen, and it can happen in different situations and ceremonies and things like that. And you can have something leave, and you might have even had that experience at some point, right? Where you're like, oh wow, something was there and now it's not. And that's amazing. But what we're talking about is the holistic, the systemic of addressing every part of your life and every aspect of your being. And like Michelle, I think you said it really beautifully, that you are becoming immune to these issues.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, you're finding the blessing in this experience, because it's like if somebody just goes, oh, here, this is gone. In a lot of ways, you don't actually learn the lessons of what this has come to teach you.
Mm-hmm. Which is the whole point of what you said about our demons being our greatest teachers.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
because
great.
it I believe it needs to be self in a way, you becoming more self actualized.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, what I've seen is actually teaching people personal practice, boundaries, um, taking care of themselves in different ways, working with their energy body, changing their habits and their lifestyle, and taking on new tools and techniques and strategies for working with this stuff and discernment, and uh, that will work just as well in a lot of cases for a majority of people. And then,
Mm-hmm.
there's other deeper work that needs to be done for some people, of course.
Yeah. It's like if you've got a weed, you have the option to like cut off the weed, but you leave the roots and then the weed grows back. Or you pull out the weed, but some of the seeds are still in there. Or you repot and change the pH of the soil and plant the planter full of really healthy things so there's no more room for weeds,
Right. And
you know?
this is how I was taught, that you're supposed to work with cancer, right? That you
Mm-hmm.
have a tumor and that you can shrink a tumor, and that a practitioner can come in and shrink a tumor. That actually isn't the hardest part. The real healing from that is going into the energy and the emotions and the past trauma, and really working with the nervous system and healing, like all of that deep healing that occurs. For the most part, that's occurring on um it's not instantaneous oftentimes. There are miracles, there are absolutely miracles. They do occur. I have heard of them happening. But oftentimes those miracles are coinciding inside of a container of transformation and doing the work that helps the thing not to come back, because a tumor
Mm-hmm.
can go away. There's plenty of people out there that have been cured of cancer and who it reemerges. So you can really look at something like an entity or something in that needs to be extracted, um, is almost sometimes like a tumor in your system, where it's this
Mhm.
coagulation and stagnation of, sometimes we mistake and we think that it's an outside spiritual entity and force, when it is just this coagulation of your own energy and
Mhm.
emotions and unprocessed, undigested trauma that has not been touched. And it just creates something that over time has a sort of form and a consciousness of a kind.
So refer back to episode, I think it's number 92. You don't have an entity and no one is attacking you, because that would be
No,
an
that would be.
example of that.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
But you
so what's so the preparation, the actual work of the extraction parts, right? Then the integration piece, I think, is really important to understand that all of these phases are valuable and deserve attention and time. And a lot of times people don't understand that when you go through this process of clearing something that's significant, you really have to care for yourself afterwards in such a big way. The Everything that you consume needs to be thought of. Every
Mhm.
person that you're around needs to be considered, and you need to clean up your personal environment, and um and oftentimes do some specific practices and pieces in your home, because a lot of times your home, if you have something, it's also now sort of, it's like bed bugs. You've got like the things in your house too. So you also need to oftentimes do some good clearing work in your space and around your bed, and sometimes grid out your space so that it has uh, greater protection for you. And so there's so
Mhm.
many of these different considerations and things that a practitioner um, might recommend for you to do on top of the other piece.
Do you, out of curiosity, do you know other people who practice extractions in the way that we're talking about? Genuine question.
I mean, I'm assuming that.
I'm assuming they exist. Well, that's why I'm asking, because I'm assuming they exist too. But I also think of people. It was really only, I think, only one person that I can think of who contacted me for help in this regard, where I was advising, okay, let's do the 6 months of work. Here's what you can expect, and I spelled out all the things that we've been talking about in this episode of here's why this happens, here's how I approach it, here's why that's going to be the best thing for you, and all of my recommendations. And they ended up saying, something to the effect of like, no, I don't want it that way, I just want a couple of sessions and have it gone, and also you charge too much. And then they went and found another practitioner who did what they wanted. Like, I think they ended up doing maybe 2 sessions with that practitioner, and they sent me an email afterwards to tell me, I found somebody else, thank you, no thank you, and by the way, this practitioner only charges this much money. So it was a total like flipping the bird to me of like, I like, you didn't do what I wanted. And so I responded, I'm so happy that you found someone that
Yeah,
resonates with you. I'm happy for you that you received valuable healing. Great, that's wonderful, good for you. And I really
yeah,
hope that person's okay. I really hope it works, but it was just kind of a funny, like, wow, they circled back to like
yeah.
say, yeah.
I mean, I'm like, you need to come for 3 sessions at least, because I want to make sure that
Mhm.
you're okay, and I want to
Yeah.
make sure that everything is sorting itself out in the right way, because
Mhm.
I want to be integrity in my practice. And
Mhm.
I can't ensure that if somebody comes for 1 session and then they leave, I don't know what the heck is going on with them. I don't know how they're
Yeah.
doing. I don't know. I don't know if they're the kind of person who's willing to, reach back out and follow up. And so, um, Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people who will just do an extraction in a session, I guess, or two, or something
Mhm.
like that. So,
Yeah,
um, I'm looking for people to refer people to, because um, if somebody
because we
wants
don't do
that,
that.
they
Yeah.
should totally have that. I think they should totally have that. And, um, it's, I also feel, I'll be honest, I feel that I'm better at it in person. I
Yeah.
think that I'm better at it in person. And so,
Mhm.
because it's just more, it's just, it's a lot, it can be a lot of work energetically. And I like to be able to put my hands on people's tissues,
Yeah.
and that helps me. So, if somebody's reaching out from far away, sometimes I'm seeking to find them a local practitioner and somebody that they can see locally, or
Yeah.
somebody who feels really like they love to do this. They love to
Mhm.
do it online or whatever.
Yeah. I hear you. I mean, I feel like in general, I do really just enjoy doing healing work with people in person, but I have had success with doing extractions over distance work as well. And I've done plenty of those. So I hear you. And for if you're listening and you're thinking, gosh, like I don't know any practitioners where I live. Or I live in like a small town in the middle of nowhere and there's no witches around or whatever, like it's okay. It is possible to do an extraction over distance. If you
Mhm.
can go see a local practitioner, that's great. Or if you're hearing what Kat and I are talking about and what we're saying resonates with you and you want to work with either one of us, it is possible if you're not local. Totally doable. It is a thing that can be managed, and it is possible for you to receive help. You don't have to live with this thing for the rest of your life. I think that,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to speak to that for a moment. Like there's this despair that I see in a lot of
Mhm.
people of, gosh, I'm so tired of this. I don't want to live like this anymore and I don't know what else to do. And I do very confidently believe that, this too can end, and it is possible to receive healing, and I have every reason to believe that anyone who has an entity or unwelcome spirit attention, that they can receive healing and not live with that anymore.
Yeah, and I've seen people
Mhm.
have incredible healings and transformations, and hi, look into the darkness. It's Ophelia, my black cat. If you're on audio version here, um, people can have incredible transformations. What does that mean? Look into the darkness. Uh,
Right. The cat just walked in our
well, I
lap.
mean, honestly, this let's talk about that just for a second. Is that oftentimes these experiences that are so dark, they really cause us to look into the darkness and to be with the darkness in ourselves, and to be with the really challenging parts of ourselves. And I think that's why sometimes you need that extra support, because that work often requires someone to be with you in those parts of self as well. Um, so
Yeah. Well, let's do a quick roundup of tools, tips, recommendations, etc. before we close. You mentioned, Kat, having a personal practice. You rattled off a few things really quickly right there,
Mhm.
but I want to draw attention back to that. Having a really healthy and consistent personal practice that includes embodiment, movement practice, somatic practice,
Mhm.
includes nutrition, taking really great care of your animal body through rest, through aligned exercise, through nutrition, through supplements, detox, etc. Getting outside, breathing fresh air, getting sunlight, all of those things.
Changing your environment. So if you
Mhm.
are in a toxic home, if you're in a toxic relationship, um, these can be really serious issues that you need to change.
Mhm. looking at relationships that you have with coping mechanisms, such, whatever that might be, or numbing mechanisms or checkout mechanisms in your life, whether that's, streaming services, social media, Netflix, etc., smoking, drinking, shopping, sex, whatever those might be, whatever your checkout mechanism is, we do end up forming agreements with energies. As I think, Kat, you mentioned something about we subconsciously invite in energies to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, or to hang out with us. We
Hmm.
invite
Yeah.
things to hang out with us based on our actions and our things that we're into, right?
Hmm. Yeah. So
Um,
looking at that and being in declaration about what you are and what you are not inviting into your life. And you can even say this out loud. There is a version of a prayer that both Kat and I are familiar with called the sovereignty prayer. And you can declare out loud, I am a sovereign being. I do not give permission to mocking spirits, vicious spirits, vampiric spirits, unwelcome spiritual attention of any kind to be present in my life, in my body, in my reality. I do give permission to beings who are pure 100% of the light and love, divine beings, to come into my life and be part of my reality. So something to that effect. It doesn't have to be those exact words, but your conscious declaration of what you are saying yes or no to.
yeah, and with that, people can find sometimes an incredible amount of relief and sometimes some really fascinating instantaneous relief by having boundaries and saying, no, you don't belong here. I am not in agreement with you. You must leave now. You are not allowed to be here. You are not allowed to be in my body, near my body, in my family, near my family. You are not welcome here. Absolutely no. And I call in the highest light, the highest love, and to call in maybe spiritual beings that you are very resonant with, Archangel Michael, the Jesus Christ, the Christic frequency, and bringing in those lights, imagining those colors engulfing your body, asking for divine blessings to come in and to be working with God frequencies and to truly ask for help from the higher realms that are available to you, because it's funny how often that people will have really challenging experiences and then you ask them, well, so are you talking to this spirit and telling them not to be here? And they're like, no, I hadn't even thought of that. Well, have you called in any supportive help that would help you? No, I hadn't even thought of that. I'm just here freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
So, because like I said, it's a lot about your own personal agency, sovereignty, activation, power, you taking up space within your body, within your field, within your home. And you taking up all the space that you are means there's no room for anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Mic drop. We're done. That's great.
So I actually have a course that's very, very insanely reasonably priced called Psychic Protection that goes through every area of your life where you might need protection and there's some really great practices in there. So when you start adding those energy practices into your regular routine, it is going to give you that robustness and the clearing that you're looking for. So you can find that on my website under the self-study classes is where it's at right now.
Awesome. I'm glad you have that tool.
Yeah.
I'm in the process. I keep saying, gosh, I really need to record this of having a Foundations of Energetic Mastery course that currently doesn't exist, but who knows, by the time, if you watch this episode a year or so in the future, it might exist by then. But in the meantime, you can certainly reach out to me if you need additional support regarding extractions or have questions or want to work with me for an extraction. You can find me through
Yeah.
my website at michellehawk.com.
Michelle is really good, and I'll tell a story about my own personal experience with Michelle. It's probably one of the reasons that we work together so much is that it's not. I was into Michelle before this happened, and then I was like, oh, this is a cincher. But I had a pain, an unexplainable chronic sometimes debilitating, very strange pain that would come and go out of my body for about 10 years. And sometimes it would just flare up and I'd have this sharp, horrible pain. And then it would be there for a while and then it would go away. And Michelle came to visit me at one point in San Diego, and she was like, "Okay, well, let's do some trade." And I said, "Well, will you work on this particular issue?" And she did, and did an extraction, and I never heard again, not one more day in my life. And that was definitely 10 years ago or more. I don't even know. But yeah, that was about 10, maybe 10
Wow.
years time ago.
Well, we met like 10 years ago, so it
Yeah.
might have been less than 10 years ago. Okay.
But yeah.
Wow. I forgot about that completely. I'm
Yeah.
so happy that worked well for you.
It
Thank you for
totally.
sharing that story.
There you go. There's an example of a miraculous, sudden, one session healing. Um,
But you
that
also have like a really strong practice that,
I had
there was
been
a lot of.
working on for 10 years.
You what?
That I had been working on for 10 years.
Oh,
Right? Like
you're welcome.
I had been I had been working on it for a long time, and then Michelle showed up, and it really, really cleared it out. So,
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that story. Are we sure it wasn't a pickle jar situation where you loosened it like
oh,
90% of the way and I just popped it off? But I will
mm,
take credit. I will take
no,
credit. I am really great at what I do. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I appreciate
no, I
that.
had no idea that there was a past life situation that was sort of still anchored in and carrying on some pain in my life, and
Yeah.
so, that it's interesting to think we don't, that's in the realm of extraction work, right? Because we
Hmm.
often think, oh, there's this outside entity that is shown up, but sometimes we come in with something, or we just
Hmm.
have, there's this thing, and it's a very complex world of spirit and energy, but we have these pieces that sometimes are just like, okay, let's clean that up and get that out of there. And I've had
Mm,
people who had miraculous healings in one session, but I still like to bookend those with support.
absolutely. Wonderful. Well, for those of you who are seeking support around this, you can find Kat's work at katherinebird.com, or you can find my website, michellehawk.com. And again, this is something that we do. We have a lot of experience in, and you are in good hands should you choose to contact either of us about that. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, share these episodes with anyone that you think needs to hear this. And again, you can always circle back to episode, I think, number 92, 93 about entities and attachments for more information. And please stay tuned for more work from us.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Kat.